adore my 64, my Commodore 64.
Golf, the royal and ancient game. For centuries, millions of players have walked the fairways, drawn in by a sport that strips everything down to just you, a club and a ball, surrounded by carefully manicured nature. Golf is quiet, it's deliberate, it's serene. Some even call it the ultimate test of character.
Fuck this shit, fuck me in the ass. Fuck you, you fucking stupid cunt, monkey, licking fuck that!
It's also, without question, one of the most rage-inducing pastimes ever invented. A game where grown adults whisper respectfully one moment and then snap a $400 driver over their knee the next. But here's the thing about golf. It gets under your skin. No matter how many times we slice one into the trees or take a divot the size of a dinner plate, what sticks and what keeps us coming back is that one perfect shot. That feeling is exactly what Bruce and Roger Carver set out to capture on the Commodore 64 with Leaderboard Golf. This wasn't about arcade flash or instant gratification. It was about making shots. Club selection mattered, wind mattered, and above all, precision mattered. For millions of armchair duffers, this was the closest thing to stepping out onto the links, and it laid the groundwork for decades of golf simulations that followed. So lace up your shoes and fire up the golf cart as we tee off on the digital fairways that started it all, Leaderboard Golf. When you think about it, golf is almost the perfect sport for a video game. Clear goals, turn-based play, and physics that computers love, plus the rare ability to be relaxing, frustrating, and deeply addictive all at once. It's no wonder then that golf games were among the earliest to appear. Magnavox kicked things off with computer golf in 1978, and companies like Atari, Apple, and Intellivision soon released their own takes on the sport. These early games were enjoyable enough, but they didn't really feel like golf. Most use a top-down view with gameplay centered on guiding a ball around hazards toward a target. They played more like a cross between billiards and target shooting. Fun certainly, but far removed from the experience of standing on a real fairway. By the mid-80s though, the timing was finally right for a breakthrough. Home computers like the Commodore 64 were powerful enough to support a convincing simulation, and developers were gaining the technical chops needed to take advantage of that power. Enter the Carver brothers and Access Software. Bruce Carver was working as an engineer in Salt Lake City when he bought a Commodore 64 in 1982. Fascinated by the machine, he soon developed a sprite editing program he called Sprite Master, which he sold through a local computer dealer. To his surprise, it sold well enough that Carver began to suspect that there might be a future in this whole software thing. With partner Chris Jones, $25,000 and some office space in his basement, Access Software was born. Their first game, Neutral Zone, sold well enough to show them they were on the right track, but it was their next release that truly put Access on the map. Beachhead became one of the highest-selling games in 1983, paving the way for other military-themed titles like Raid Over Moscow and Beachhead 2. More importantly, it gave the company the financial breathing room to experiment with new ideas and new techniques. One of these ideas was a very different kind of golf game. Roger Carver loved the sport, and Bruce enjoyed modeling the physics of ball motion, something they had already explored in a bowling game called 10th Frame. After videotaping Roger's golf swing in their basement, a sentence that already feels very 1980s, the team spent weeks rotoscoping each frame into a sprite animation. With the swing captured, Bruce focused on the ball physics, trajectory, spin, wind, bounce, the stuff that makes it feel real. Suddenly they had a working prototype. It blew everyone away. Leaderboard had arrived. The remaining pieces quickly fell into place, and the game shipped in the first half in 1986 to rave reviews and brisk sales. The game instantly changed the golf genre. It simply felt different to play than anything else on the market. The realistic animations, behind the ball view, shot shaping, and continually changing perspective as you move through the course were all novel features in their own right, and they had never been combined like this before. Computer golf had never felt so good, and Access had a hit on their hands. They immediately doubled down, kicking off one of the most aggressive and successful release schedules in gaming history. First up was Leaderboard Tournament, a collection of 4 new courses released just a few months after. The Executive Edition followed in early 1987, adding trees and bunkers, new layers of realism, and new opportunities for rage. Later that same year came World Class Leaderboard, further refining the engine and introducing 3 real-world courses, including St. Andrews. That was followed by 3 additional add-on packs in the famous courses of the World Series. So in a roughly 2-year span, Access released multiple top-selling golf games along with a steady stream of new courses. They were running a live service model decades before anyone even knew what that was. And of course, Access couldn't keep this gem exclusive to Commodore 64 users. While developing these new releases, they also pushed Leaderboard onto a wide range of other systems, some handled internally, others outsourced. In the end, the series appeared on at least 14 different platforms. Perhaps most remarkably, the market never felt saturated. People loved the expanding courses and steadily increasing realism. There was a huge appetite for this kind of simulation, an appetite that would soon lead directly to Lynx, the best-selling golf software on PC throughout the 90s. Leaderboard checks all the boxes for what makes a great golf game. For starters, and this sounds a bit silly even to say, it actually feels like golf. Your player is viewed from behind with the hole visible in the distance, dynamically rendered in 3D. You're not staring at an abstract map or a top-down diagram here. You're standing on the fairway, lining up a shot. It's difficult to overstate how innovative this was. Outside of niche genres like flight simulators, 3D was usually seen as slow and unnecessary. But for golf, it's perfect. The perspective changes after every shot, and each new viewpoint presents a fresh problem to solve, just like it does on a real course. Redrawing the screen takes a few seconds after each shot, but it's a small price to pay for the realism, even if that occasionally means dropping your golfer onto a tiny disc in the middle of the water. These unintentionally funny moments became an iconic part of the presentation. If nothing else, the game is very honest about how badly you messed up. Landscapes are sparse in the original release, making those 4 early courses feel like endless fairways surrounded by water. But this changed quickly. The Executive Edition upped the realism with trees and bunkers, and just a few months later, World Class Leaderboard added even more detail along with a cool course editor. And these set pieces aren't just eye candy. Sending a shot into the trees can mean many shots of frustration. And there's no mercy rule. If it takes 15 shots to get back to the fairway, well, that's just what it takes. The game will happily post your bloated score on the leaderboard, often to the amusement of whoever you're playing with. Each shot starts with club selection, and you have a full range of woods and irons to choose from. Getting clean distance is relatively easy from the tee or fairway, but all bets are off if you find yourself in the rough or bunker. Longer clubs become harder to control, and while heroic bunker shots are technically possible,
that looked like it might have went right.
This is right on line.
they demand near perfect execution. Miss the timing even slightly, and the results look a lot like a typical day for me on the course. And just like real golf, a little course management goes a long way. The World Class Edition introduced a convenient top-down course map that made club selection easier to judge, but earlier versions relied almost entirely on feel, experience, and the printed course diagrams in the manual. With your club selected, it's time to swing. Pressing the joystick button starts the backswing and fills the power meter. A second input locks it in, and the marker races back the other way. Hit the center line for a clean shot, miss slightly for fade or draw, and miss badly, and things get ugly. Wind adds one final obstacle. At lower skill levels, it barely registers, but on professional difficulty, it becomes a critical factor. Ignore it and the game will make sure you learn that lesson repeatedly. Once you're on the green, one last test awaits: putting. Success comes down to reading slope, judging distance, and hitting the ball with just the right amount of power. There are no gimmies here. Even short putts demand your full attention, and it's remarkably easy to miss a 2-footer if you get careless. Together, all these mechanics combine to form a fantastic game of golf. One that's even better with friends. Up to 4 players can compete in a round, leading to trash talk, shared frustration, and some truly memorable moments. And just like in real golf, success all comes down to strategy, patience, and touch. Crushing the ball is easy. Accuracy, that's earned. Graphically, Leaderboard is superb. Even in the more sparse early editions of the game, the courses look great. But by the time the World Class Edition arrived, they were absolutely gorgeous. Beautifully laid out with autumn foliage, bunkers, and water. The 3D engine delivers all of this with an impressive sense of depth as you look down the course. That attention to detail extends to the interface as well, and the overall presentation just feels golfy. The leaderboards present scores exactly the way you'd expect, the top-down maps are gorgeous, and the interface running along the right side of the screen packs a remarkable amount of information into a compact space. We expect this kind of efficient UI design today, but in 1986, this was genuinely innovative. Beyond that, it's all about the small touches. The shadow beneath the ball, the background scenery, and of course, the golfer himself. Even nearly 40 years later, the animation holds up and it's about as smooth and convincing as anything you'll find on the Commodore 64. Golf is a quiet game, and Leaderboard sound design reflects that restraint. Swings and the sound of the ball dropping into the cup are crisp and specific. More golf than video game. Other effects, like the ball clanging off the flagpole, just act as sharp little exclamation points. And really, that's about it when it comes to sound, and that's exactly why it works. Like golf itself, Leaderboard is minimalistic. It's a simulation, which means no constant music loop and definitely no goofy sound effects.
Leaderboard.
The Commodore 64 Appreciation Society absolutely adores Leaderboard Golf, and we're definitely not alone. Contemporary reviews were overwhelmingly positive across all 3 major releases. Compute praised the original Leaderboard, noting that it was so much like the real game that you're tempted to play from an electric golf cart. The Executive Edition earned a strong 8 out of 10 from Commodore user, with reviewers highlighting the beautiful and challenging addition of trees and bunkers. And as good as the reception was for the first 2 versions, World Class Leaderboard pushed things even further. Zap64 awarded it a staggering 94%, calling it quite simply the apex of golfing simulations. Remarkably, that enthusiasm has held up over time. Today, all 3 editions sit in the 8.5 to 8.6 range on Lemon 64, placing them comfortably within the site's top 100 games of all time, and cementing their place among the platform's most influential titles. And it's hard to overstate just how important that influence was. Building on the success of Leaderboard, Access brought their expertise to the PC with the Lynx series. Throughout the 90s, Lynx wasn't just a niche golf title, it was a phenomenon, selling millions of copies and becoming the dominant golf simulation on the platform. That success, along with other major hits like the Tex Murphy series, led to Access being acquired by Microsoft in 1999. A few years later, the studio was sold to Take-Two Interactive and renamed IndieBuilt, where they continued developing sports games, including Lynx. But that only lasted a short time, and the studio closed its doors in 2006. But the story doesn't end there. As part of the Microsoft acquisition, a spin-off company called TruGolf was formed, applying the team's hard-won expertise to interactive golf simulators, the kind you see now in indoor golf venues around the world. TruGolf is still thriving today, led by people like Chris Jones and Roger Carver, the same minds who helped bring Leaderboard to life decades earlier in that basement in Utah. And finally, there's Bruce Carver himself. He passed away in 2004 after a battle with cancer. Remembered as a devoted family man, a thoughtful leader, and one of the true pioneers of gaming, Bruce's work continues to echo, not just in games, but in how golf is played, practiced, and experienced to this day. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like or subscribing. And if you have any memories or stories about Leaderboard, I'd love to hear them. Drop them in the comments. Hope to see you again.